Once upon a time, there was a bot that was able to get hundreds of checkouts for sneakers that typically were near impossible to get. At the time, there were only 3 people that owned this bot. I was one of them. Not too long after getting access to this bot, I met a buyer on eBay who was eager to buy all of my sneakers for prices that were too good to be true. I was going to make so much money, but there's a catch. This is a story of my experience with palacebot. Welcome to Reseller Stories. Here we talk about some of the crazy things that happen behind the scenes in the sneaker reselling and botting community. My name is Nova, and this is going to be the first of many episodes of this new series. I'm planning to bring on a number of people to the show who have some unbelievable stories to tell, but for the first episode, I'll be kicking it off with a story of my own. 2020 was a time when most people would consider that year to be one of the peak years for sneaker botting. Every website was getting botted, except for maybe a handful of websites. One of those unbottable websites was Shoe Palace. And the reason was because they had their own custom website, which I assume was built specifically for Shoe Palace, and their anti-bot measures were extremely strict. Let me walk you through a release procedure. Go to the sneaker that you want, select your size, press add to cart, and then you are greeted with a 2-minute timer. You have to wait for that timer to hit 0, and then you try again, and then you're hit with a timer again. You have to keep doing this over and over again until you get lucky enough to proceed to the rest of the checkout page, which is a whole nother process, where you have to keep submitting your payment information 3,000 times until it finally gets accepted. That's if it isn't sold out yet. If you attempt to refresh during the 2-minute timer, there's a high possibility that your IP address gets banned. Sometimes they'll ban you even if you do wait out the 2-minute timer. Furthermore, from my observation, whenever Shoe Palace would drop sneakers, they would release thousands of stock, where most other websites would release anywhere between 100 to 600 pairs. As a result, the Shoe Palace releases would last for several hours, when all the other websites would sell out in literal seconds. So it's actually quite common that people literally sit through this timer for 2, 3, 4 hours at a time, just being patient, hoping for a chance to get one pair. Me personally, I didn't have that much patience. After 30 to 40 minutes, I would just give up. There have been many times where I thought to myself, if a bot is able to figure out how to bypass this annoying timer, that would be insanely lucrative. In May of 2020, the Jordan 1 High Royal Toe released. I went through the drop the same way all the other botters did, and it was quite successful. I ignored Shoe Palace for the most part because I'm not trying to waste 4 hours for a small chance of getting one sneaker. And then I look on Twitter and I see a success post from Washed Cops. From the looks of it, he did the impossible. He figured it out. He was able to bypass a timer and he's about to buy a whole mansion with his winnings. When I saw that success post, there was only one thing on my mind. I need that bot. Immediately, I followed the palacebot Twitter account and waited patiently for them to release their bot to the public. Shoe Palace then kept restocking the Royal Toes, and palacebot kept obliterating these restocks, and my desire for the bot grew more and more, and then one day... Hey Nova, I'm the co-owner of Shaw Solutions. With Shaw, you might know him, and I also own palacebot.io. I noticed you follow us over there. It's a new bot that I've created that supports a few websites, Shoe Palace and Amazon, so far more added soon. I was wondering if for the upcoming drops you might want to try it out. Oh my goodness, I thought I was dreaming. I was legit freaking out, but I kept my composure. Wrote a supportive reply addressing my interest in trying out the bot. An entire month passes, and nothing. We are closely approaching the release of the highly anticipated Yeezy 350 Zion, and I need this bot before the release. This release was the one that every reseller had their eye on. So I sent the following message, hoping to get a hold of it in time for the drop. And to my pleasant surprise, the answer is yes. I finally got a hold of the bot that I've always wanted. And let's just say it wasn't exactly as easy as I envisioned it. So this was the way it worked. You create a bunch of tasks. When the timer on the Shoe Palace website goes up, you have to stagger start the tasks. This means you can't start it all at once or else your computer will explode. I'm pretty sure I learned this the hard way.
My computer's just about to explode, dude.
So you have to start maybe 100 to 300 at a time. Once they're started, what each task is doing is actually going through this 2-minute timer and retrying once the timer is finished. So instead of one computer sitting there retrying every 2 minutes, you have hundreds doing this at the same time. The issue is that the proxies I was using and was recommended to use was residential proxies. Back then, residential proxies were quite janky. They were slow in speed, they weren't very reliable, and your connection cutting off is quite normal. Combine that with Shoe Palace's servers getting hit with tens of thousands of requests from people trying to buy the shoes from the website, which would inevitably cause hiccups. Let's just say it wasn't a smooth experience. For every 100 proxies, only about 10 to 30 of them would seem to be working smoothly as intended on the website. Still way better than just trying to go for the website without a bot. But working smoothly doesn't mean checkout. It just means having the ability to be on the timer page without issues. Once one of the tasks are able to finally get past the timer, a cookie is sent to your Discord webhook. You then create a different type of task where you take the cookie and then you create the task with that cookie. Now this task is different from the one we originally created. These new checkout tasks go straight to the checkout page, ultimately skipping the timer. Now it's possible to use the same cookie for multiple tasks and multiple checkouts. However, the cookie expires after a set amount of time, and having a cookie doesn't guarantee a checkout either. The payment processor typically won't accept your payment unless you get super lucky because the website sucks. Combine that with the unreliability of residential proxies, and the chance of a successful checkout is quite slim, even with all of this. If your computer starts to experience slowing down because you're running too many, then delete the tasks which are assigned to sold out sizes, and delete the tasks with old cookies. And if you're getting a lot of cookies, then this process is quite fast paced and involve checking sold out sizes, making sure your cookies are fresh, deleting tasks, etc. This bot isn't exactly a thing where you just press start and then you just wait and see, which is what a lot of botting is nowadays. You have to actively be clicking around, copy pasting, deleting, things like that. The main saving grace at this point is that these drops take a long time with a lot of stock, giving me the opportunity to still check out quite a lot of pairs despite all the hiccups for the Zion release. Not bad using the bot for the first time. So since I got so many, I decided to list about 20 of them as a pre-order on eBay. In 2 days, my pre-order listing was sold out. My payout for each pair ranged between $275 to $290 per pair after fees, so I profited about $25 to $50 per pair. New York taxes really dug into my margins, and this number could have been much higher. But anyways, when I got all of the Zions in, I listed many of them as the same price as my pre-order price, which at this point was actually higher than the market price. It was more expensive to buy from my eBay store than it was to buy from StockX or GOAT. Within a week, this listing had also sold out. I thought I was listing them for too cheap. Usually I start questioning my prices if my items sell too quickly. But upon checking, I confirmed my prices are above market price. I fulfilled all of these orders like usual, and a few days later, I get a message from one of the Yeezy buyers. The message went something along the lines of, "I recently purchased from you on a different eBay account. Do you have any more sizes?" We'll call this eBay seller John. He then mentioned that he wants to buy more, but he has to use different eBay accounts. Now, that's shady. I asked him why. John said it's because he uses eBay gift cards to make his purchases, and he can only load up each eBay account with a limited dollar amount in gift cards. As of today, the gift card limit is $1,500 per month per account. I don't know what it was back in 2020, but basically he used multiple accounts to get around this limit. He explained to me that he buys eBay gift cards for cheap, and that's why he prefers to buy it from me through this method. I tried to do a quick Google search on eBay gift cards for sale, and I couldn't find anything that makes these transactions even remotely close to the savings that he'd get just by not buying from me. Something's going on here. Normally, I wouldn't really care that much, but this was a time before eBay's sneaker authentication program, which means the thousands of dollars in orders that he's placing, there's a possibility that he can scam me and get that money back. Because for the most part, eBay will side with the buyers whenever there's an issue presented. He can literally say, "Hey, I made all of these orders, but all the boxes are empty." Then boom, I'm screwed. There's nothing I can really do to disprove that. So that's why dealing with shady buyers on eBay back then is generally something I want to stay away from. By the ways, with the introduction of eBay's authentication program, this isn't an issue anymore. Back then, however, this was a very real risk. But my judgment was clouded by money. I didn't ask him further questions and I just kept selling him my Zions. Eventually, I sold almost all of them to him. Like most other resellers during this time, I decided to hold a handful of pairs, which was a huge mistake. But anyways, as all of this was unfolding, I started to get more and more comfortable with palacebot. There was another new bot that popped up out of nowhere, which also supports Shoe Palace. This bot went by the name of Dark AIO. I then received a message from the main proxy provider of Dark AIO. This proxy provider went by the name of Butter Proxies. He was interested in being a provider for palacebot as well, so he sent me a message to give his proxies a try. He claimed to have working data center proxies. For those of you guys who are unfamiliar with the term, data center proxies are extremely reliable as far as uptime, and they are much faster than residential proxies. So instead of only 10 to 30% of the proxies actually working, for data center proxies, it should be around 98 to 100% of these proxies working. The downside is that they're very expensive, and it's hard to find data center proxies that work specifically on Shoe Palace. At some point, I was asking some proxy company owners why it's so hard to find Shoe Palace proxies, and from what I remember, they said something along the lines of the merchant that sells these special IPs are in the Middle East and they only sell them to a select number of people or something to that effect. I don't know, that's how I interpreted it. I could be wrong about that, or they could have been lying to me. At this point, this sounds too crazy for me. All I know for sure is that they weren't easy to get, and they were very expensive. Anyways, he sent some proxies my way, and the release date for the Jordan 1 High Chicago Snakeskin 1s are quickly approaching. I got my godly bot, my godly proxies, and I'm ready to go. The first 15 to 20 minutes of the drop, I was getting a decent amount of checkouts, but after that, I really got the sequence perfected, and I was checking out the most amount of shoes I've ever checked out in my life up until this point. I maxed out 3 to 4 credit cards, and unfortunately I didn't have that many more backups. Not that I didn't have any, I just didn't expect the results, so I didn't add more billing profiles to the bot, which means I could have gotten so much more. They actually canceled a chunk of my orders, but they still shipped out the majority of them, 146 pairs, and I couldn't be any happier. This time I didn't sell any pre-orders. Wanted to get all the shoes in hand before I sold them so that I can take a picture for the thumbnail of the YouTube video, which I'd eventually release. A few days after the release, I messaged John, the shady eBay buyer, and I told him the news. Hey, I got a boatload of these Jordan 1 snakeskins. How much you want to buy them for? And the negotiations went something like this. I said, I can probably do $330 for each pair. And then he said, let's do $1,400 for every 4 pairs instead. So I did the math, 1,400 divided by 4, and this comes up to $350 per pair, which is more than my original offer. Now this made 0 sense to me, but I'm not going to refuse that offer. After eBay fees, my payout was about $315 to $323 per pair, giving me a profit margin of around $108 to $126 per pair that I sold to him. There was some variation in prices depending on the sizes. So when I finished taking that thumbnail picture, I sold the majority of pairs to him, but I was extremely hesitant to sell everything to him because if I actually got scammed, it would be catastrophic and I would lose thousands and thousands of dollars, ultimately money that I couldn't afford to lose. So I listed a bunch on GOAT and Flight Club as well for significantly less payout. Because by the time I got the shoes delivered, the price for these shoes dropped to around $280 to $300, but he was still buying them like $40 to $70 over market price, which further heightened my suspicions. Fast forward 2 years later, and honestly, I never got to figure out how he was buying from me at prices that didn't even make sense, and I had 0 issues with me keeping my money. If I could turn back time, I would have just sold him all of my snakeskins and Zions and I would have profited around $20,000. After a while, I just wasn't comfortable selling to him because he's bought so much from me, and if all of that was refunded, I would feel so stupid for being too greedy. So John and I spoke less and less, and eventually he stopped asking to buy my shoes and we lost contact. If anyone has any theories on how he was able to buy my shoes at such a high price, please let me know in the comments. But either way, he showed up in my life at the perfect time, exactly when I needed to get rid of hundreds of shoes, exactly when I got a hold of one of the most dominant bots to have ever existed. And as for Shoe Palace, they switched over to Shopify towards the end of the year, which means that this timer is not something that people have to deal with anymore. The days of getting hundreds of checkouts on a single release on this one website has come to an end. The remaining releases that took place on the website before they made the switch wasn't really anything too noteworthy, unfortunately. But either way, I'm very thankful that I was able to get in on the action and experience something that was truly magnificent.